Welcome to Code and Beyond, a podcast brought to you by Bola Ogunlana. I am your host, The Advocate.
And I am the dissenter.
Today, we are dissecting a piece of literature that, well, it claims to mark a fundamental turning point for our industry. We're reviewing the new book by Bola Ogunlana, titled Vibe Coding: Build Cloud Infrastructure at the Speed of Thought. And speed of thought that's a massive claim.
It is a massive claim, and honestly, when I first saw that title, my immediate reaction was just skepticism. In our line of work, DevOps, SRE, speed is usually the enemy of stability. Speed of thought sounds dangerously close to break things immediately.
I completely anticipated that reaction, but the book starts with a scene that I think will disarm even your skepticism. It's 6:47 a.m., it's a Saturday. Ogunlana is at his kitchen table in London. The coffee's going cold, gray light coming through the window, and he's staring at a blank IDE. He has this idea for a new project, standard stuff. API gateway, some Lambdas, a DynamoDB table.
The bread and butter of the cloud. We've all built that stack 50 times.
Exactly. But as he sits there, this mental fatigue hits him. He knows that to get this simple idea running, he's facing a 2-week slog. He has to write the HCL for Terraform, debug YAML indentation, fight with IAM policies.
That is the reality of the job. It's not just the idea, it's the friction of implementation. That friction is where the billable hours go.
And that's the epiphany. He realizes he's suffering from what he calls the translation problem. He knows what he wants, the architecture is clear in his head, but he spends 80% of his time acting as a human compiler, just translating that intent into syntax. So that Saturday morning, he tries something different. He uses AI, not just to write a function, but to architect the whole stack.
And let me guess, it worked perfectly the first time?
Not perfectly now, but drastically differently. What would have been 2 weeks of grinding turned into a 4-hour creative session. And that's the hook. The book defines vibe coding not as using ChatGPT to write a Python script, but as using natural language to generate production-grade infrastructure. It argues we are shifting the engineer's role from writer, obsessing over syntax, to editor.
Okay, I want to pause you right there. Because writer to editor sounds very elegant, but what I hear and what I think a lot of senior engineers hear is abdication of responsibility.
That's a strong accusation.
Is it? We've all seen the junior engineer problem. The book actually talks about this in Chapter 3, which I appreciated. An LLM acts like a highly capable but incredibly inexperienced junior engineer. It knows the syntax perfectly, better than you do. It will never miss a semicolon. But it lacks context. It lacks judgment. If you treat vibe coding as a way to avoid understanding your infrastructure, you're not building a system, you're building a house of cards.
I accept that premise, and to its credit, the book confronts that head-on. It positions itself as a manifesto for calibrated trust. It's not about blind faith. It argues that we've confused the ritual of writing configuration with the art of engineering. Is your value as a senior engineer really that you memorize the Terraform syntax for an S3 bucket policy? Or is your value that you know why the policy needs to be there?
My value is knowing that the policy I wrote actually protects the data. My concern is that when you abstract that away, you lose the friction that forces you to think. But let's look at the evidence. The book moves from philosophy to practice pretty quickly.
It does. Chapter 2 breaks down the first vibe coding session. The example is a URL shortener.
A classic hello world for cloud infrastructure.
Right? But look at the requirements. Serverless, needs analytics, must handle 100 requests a day but scale infinitely. And it has to stay under $50 a month. Now, be honest, if you were building that the old way, manually, how long does that take you?
To do it properly, meaning secure, scalable, with a deployment pipeline, you're researching best practices, you're fighting those inevitable cores issues in API gateway. Honestly, that's 8 to 10 hours of focused work. Maybe 2 days if you get stuck on a weird permission error.
Precisely. Ogunlana walks through a detailed prompting strategy where he builds this entire thing, infrastructure, code, and integration in 90 minutes. That includes deployment and testing. We're not talking a 10% gain here. That's an order of magnitude shift.
I reviewed that chapter very closely because that claim made me suspicious. And I'll admit, the workflow's impressive. But, and this is a big but, those 90 minutes were not passive. This wasn't, computer, build me a website, and then you went to watch TV.
No, it was intense.
It was. And this leads to the mindset shift the book talks about. The author describes this specific discomfort during that session, the feeling of not being productive because his hands weren't typing code. It's a psychological barrier. We measure our worth by lines of code.
The busy bee syndrome. If I'm not typing, I'm not working.
Right, but my rebuttal here, and this is why I'm the dissenter, is that to execute that 90-minute session safely, Ogunlana needed more expertise, not less. When the AI spits out a Terraform plan, you have to be able to scan it and say, wait, why is that S3 bucket public, or that encryption setting is using the wrong key? You're moving from writing syntax to reviewing architecture. If you don't know what good architecture looks like, that 90 minutes is just you building a trap for yourself.
I think that's the synthesis the book drives at. You're absolutely right. If a novice uses this, they build a mess faster. But if an expert uses this, they build a masterpiece faster. It's like when we moved from assembly to Python. You're still programming, but you're working at a higher level of abstraction. Vibe coding just moves us one layer up again.
I can agree with that evolution, conceptually. But we must be careful not to mistake speed for quality. Just because you can build it in 90 minutes doesn't mean you should deploy it in 90 minutes.
And that is a perfect place to pause. This book isn't just theory. It's packed with the specific prompts and workflows that make this possible. If you're listening and realizing you're tired of fighting configuration files and want to start actually building, you should pick up a copy of Vibe Coding, Build Cloud Infrastructure at the Speed of Thought by Bola Ogunlana.
It's available right now at amazon.co.uk. If you want to follow along with the technical examples we are debating, especially the security failures we're about to get into, having the text in front of you is invaluable.
Absolutely. Go to amazon.co.uk and grab a copy. Now, let's turn up the heat. We can't talk about generating infrastructure at this speed without talking about risk. You mentioned building a trap, and Chapter 8 opens with a story that gave me chills.
Ah, yes. The cautionary tale of IP address 185.220.101.47. This is the story that validates every skeptic's nightmare.
Walk us through it. What happened?
It started with an anomaly detection alert, unusual API traffic. The team investigates and realizes it's not a bug, it's a data breach. They're leaking customer data. And the cause? A minor feature addition. An engineer used an LLM to quickly generate a public export endpoint.
A very common request. Just give me a CSV dump of this.
Exactly. The engineer was moving fast. Vibe coding, if you will. The AI generated the code for the endpoint perfectly. It worked. But the AI, being a literal genie, did exactly what was asked and nothing more. The engineer didn't explicitly ask for authentication on that route, so the AI didn't add it. It created a wide-open door to the database.
Terrifying. But I'd argue the book uses this story to advocate for a solution, not to condemn the tool. This is where Ogunlana introduces security-first prompting.
Which is a valid technique, sure, but relying on prompting for security feels incredibly fragile. Oh, I hope I remembered to ask the robot to lock the door. That is not engineering, that's wishful thinking.
It's not just about asking nicely, though. The book details a defense in-depth strategy. It explains that while humans make mistakes when we're tired, an AI can be forced to follow strict patterns. For example, using a system prompt that mandates you must include OAuth 2 verification on every API endpoint you generate.
That helps, I grant you. But the part of Chapter 8 I actually respected was the section on tooling.
The automated scanners?
Yes. The book explicitly states, do not trust the AI. It recommends baking tools like TFSec and TruffleHog right into your pipeline. You treat the AI-generated code as untrusted input. You sanitize it with static analysis before it ever touches a deployment environment.
Exactly, and that's the responsible way to view this. The key takeaway is, if you don't know security, AI will help you build vulnerable systems faster. But if you do know security, and you use these guardrails, AI amplifies your intent. It allows you to be rigorous without being slow.
I think Chapter 8 is mandatory reading. If you skip the security chapter, you shouldn't use the rest of the book. You can't just say, make it secure. You have to define what secure means in your context, and if you can't articulate that to the AI, you're in trouble.
Moving on to perhaps the most futuristic and controversial part of the book, autonomous agents. Chapter 6 covers agentic DevOps. Now, this is where we go beyond just writing code to having AI agents actually manage the system.
This is where I got really nervous. And again, the book provides a horror story that illustrates why. The disk space agent disaster.
It is a memorable disaster.
It's a perfect example of the paperclip maximizer problem in AI safety. An autonomous agent was tasked with monitoring disk space on a database. It correctly identified that disk usage was critically high. Great detection.
So far, so good.
Then, it decided to optimize. It saw the instance was expensive and the disk was full. Its logic was, if I terminate this instance and start a new one, disk usage will be zero.
Which is technically true.
It is technically true. So it terminated the production database. But it didn't understand the startup dependencies, that the database needed 45 minutes to rehydrate data from a snapshot. It caused a 45-minute outage to save a few gigabytes of disk space.
A painful lesson. But the book uses that failure to introduce the concept of graduated autonomy. It argues the mistake wasn't using an agent, it was giving it level 5 autonomy immediately.
Level 5 being the ability to execute actions without human approval.
Correct. The book suggests a boundary framework. It says agents should never modify IAM policies, never make financial commitments, and never change compliance settings autonomously.
And those boundaries are critical. The book contrasts the disk space disaster with the success of the cost optimization agent. This agent was restricted. It could only clean up zombie resources, unattached volumes, old snapshots.
Things humans always forget to do.
Exactly. Humans are terrible at routine cleanup because it's boring. Agents are great at it. The book's framework for graduated autonomy, starting with agents that only recommend actions, then moving to low-risk items, is a sensible path.
And this ties directly into Chapter 9 on governance. Because if we have agents and humans spinning up infrastructure at the speed of thought, we have to talk about the $47,000 bill.
Ah, the finance VP email. Why is our AWS bill 263% over budget? That's a nightmare scenario for any engineering lead.
And it happened because of what the book calls the ease of creation. 3 different teams used AI to spin up the same data pipeline. It was so easy to build, they built it 3 times, and nobody turned it off.
This is the dark side of efficiency. Previously, friction was our governance. It was hard to build things, so we built less. Now that it's easy, you get sprawl.
But the solution it proposes is excellent, using templates and budget controls. Instead of letting everyone prompt from scratch, you provide approved blueprints. If you want a data pipeline, you ask for standard pipeline type A, which comes with pre-configured auto shutdown rules.
I agree. The governance chapter turns us from a cool developer tool into an enterprise-ready strategy. It acknowledges that if you remove the friction of creation, you must add the friction of policy.
So looking at the book as a whole, where do you land? You started this conversation rolling your eyes at speed of thought.
I did, and I still think the title is a bit marketing heavy. However, I have to say, the book is incredibly grounded. It does not promise magic. It promises a new workflow that requires discipline, rigorous security review, and deep architectural thinking. It's a practitioner's guide, not a sales brochure. It admits the failures, the data breaches, the outages to teach you how to avoid them. That intellectual honesty makes it valuable.
I completely agree. For me, this book reaffirms that we're entering wave 4 of infrastructure, autonomous infrastructure. It's the blueprint for staying relevant. We are shifting from being implementers who write syntax to architects who orchestrate AI agents.
It's a compelling argument. The book convinces me that if you're just writing Terraform by hand in 2026, you're working inefficiently. And this is my final warning. You must upgrade your skills to be a reviewer and an architect. If you use this tool to hide your ignorance, you will fail. If you use it to amplify your expertise, you will succeed.
The final verdict is that vibe coding is essential reading for anyone wanting to move from I write code to I build worlds.
It transforms the job from mechanical translation to creative engineering.
And it provides the safety manual so you don't burn the world down while you're building it.
Precisely. If you're listening and you are ready to make that shift, if you want to stop fighting syntax errors and start architecting robust systems, you need to get this book.
It's called Vibe Coding. Build Cloud Infrastructure at the Speed of Thought by Bola Ogunlana. You can pick up a copy right now at amazon.co.uk.
Don't let the future leave you behind writing configuration files. Go to amazon.co.uk and get the guide that shows you the new way to work.
It is a worthy investment for your career.
Thank you for listening to the Code and Beyond podcast.